Have you ever been shopping for a new or used piano and you're tearing through all of the descriptions for the instrument and you're trying to decide what do I really need to pay attention to and what don't I really need to pay attention to? Because that's me. So Ted is going to help the rest of us figure out what's really important. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in beautiful downtown San Antonio, Texas.
My name is Chris McKee, sitting in for Patrick that I've done something with. We're here with Alamo Music. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you click the like button, it lets other piano players and piano-interested people know about this channel, so we appreciate you doing that. So Ted, I need your help today, and I think a lot of people need your help today, because if they're like me, they've gone on the internet and they've shopped for either new pianos or used pianos. I've even done this in the store. Like for my family, I want to get a new piano. I'm sitting over there on the guitar side of the business, and I just don't know enough to know what I should be paying attention to in all of these bullet points and all of these descriptions when it comes to either a new or used piano, and what's just kind of the fluff that marketing people like me put in to make the description sound nice and rosy. So hopefully you can help us determine what's the most important features when it comes to a piano.
Well, when it comes to a piano, you're first off what you're paying for. Because a lot of people are like, why are they so expensive?
Yeah.
The first time piano shoppers, I get that a lot. Why are they so expensive? Well, number one is the natural resources that are in the instrument.
Sure.
Different kinds of lumber, that means it's coming from trees. And then there's different grades of steel that are in there. So it means there's like a factory involved producing the frame and then the strings and then the copper wound strings. So there's a lot of these natural resources that things you carve out of the planet, go into a factory, and a piano comes out.
You know, heck, if you compare it to guitars, just price per pound, the piano seems like a better value.
Well, it does. It does, right? Because you can pick up a guitar and walk off with it, and you could easily spend $5,000 or $6,000 on that. You can spend less and can't walk off with a piano. So that's the other thing about it. But I guess other than price, okay, because you sound like, what are the important features? Well, people do shop for price. So that you have to leave up, that's a personal discretion as to how much they're willing to spend on
your budgetary concerns.
Financing, okay? So we're going to leave that out because people always know, but you got to pay for whatever it is you get.
Sure.
Okay, so what is it that you're looking for? And I always try to remind them, remember, it's a music instrument first. Because sometimes the first reaction you get, I'm not always going to say it's the missus, but from the family's like, oh, it's ugly. I mean,
it's my wife. She's like, I want the pretty one.
Okay. So it's a music instrument first, which means with your eyes closed, it doesn't matter how it looks. And that's the problem that most musicians have in being domesticated. Okay.
Versus those feral musicians out there, like the rest of us.
Feral musicians, their stuff is duct tape and it's on the floor, and that's how any domesticated musician's thinking, God, if she wasn't here, I could just duct tape and leave it here till tomorrow night. And that's what I'm getting at. It can sound beautiful and look ugly, and a musician still likes it, but it's not going to go in your living room. It's not going to look good in a restaurant or a bar.
Ted, you don't know this, but you just accidentally created two of the very best band names in the history of band names: feral musicians and domesticated musicians. It could actually be the same band in different gigs. I'm just, that's free for somebody
different
out there.
Sides of the album.
Side A, side B. Great.
Do the same 6 songs, just produce them differently. There's a Disney version you play at home, and there's the other one that goes into your skank club.
That's great.
No, so the things that you're really going to look for is, when I say it's a music instrument, is how does it sound?
Yeah.
And then if you're the person making the sound, how does it feel?
Yeah, the action.
The action. Yeah. And then how is the overall chordal structure? How's the overall ambience? Is it a bright sounding piano? Is it muddy? Is it clear? Is it just kind of near perfect in all the spots? Is it, one of those Goldilocks pianos? And I believe that every instrument, particularly in pianos, has a Goldilocks time period in its life. And it's not always when it's fresh out of the factory. It could be 2 or 3 years or 4 or 5 years later, depends on the grade of the instrument and what it's made out of. But after those Goldilocks years, sometimes there's still lots and lots of life left in the piano for learning on. And that's where it gets to be really affordable to get a great quality used piano.
Okay.
And so some of the features that I'm talking about here today, like the tone, the touch, The other thing I always mention are the pedals, because that's the first thing people say when they walk up to a piano. Like, what do the pedals do? Because they always thought, I thought you played piano with I didn't know you played piano with your feet. Well, these are pedals, and so the pedals serve a function, and so that's one of the functions of the piano. It's one of the features that you need to look at, because on a used piano, the first complaint is, hey, the pedals don't work. That's really easily fixed. That's just a dowel.
It's an adjustment, right?
It's just a dowel that fell out, and you put it back in, and it works.
Let me ask you a quick question on pedals. I've always wondered, why do some pianos have 2 and some pianos have 3?
That's originally on a piano. There were no pedals on a piano.
Okay.
Okay, and so they actually had almost like a harpsichord lever that was between the knees. And so you could kind of push. I don't know if you've ever sat in an ancient harpsichord, and when you change registers, there's a lever. They used the same thing as a lever. Once they would have all of the dampers in it, that's how you could lift the dampers. I mean, the pianos that Mozart and Beethoven played on and wrote and composed
Very
on
different, yeah.
did not have pedals.
Yeah.
Okay, they were pianofortes, and now that's a new sound that's in some electronics, and it's not. It's a different sound.
Right.
And anyway, the pedals are there to lift the dampers off. Okay, so like on a guitar, you strum the strings, you leave them like that.
Yeah.
Or you mute them.
So you have a sustain.
So you have sustain or mute. And that was kind of hard to work as a lever, so with a pedal, it works a little
more
easier.
ergonomic, yeah.
That's what the far right pedal does on every single piano, the sustain.
Right.
The far left pedal is a damper pedal.
Okay.
And that, on an upright piano, it brings the hammers closer to the strings. So they're not going as fast, they won't hit as hard, they won't be as loud.
Got it.
Okay, it doesn't change the tone of the hammer hitting the strings.
They just don't have as much
Just
energy.
as much energy, so not as much volume. And the middle pedal, now that's the one that's kind of...
Not always there.
It's not always there.
Right.
If you have 2 pianos, 2 pedals on a piano, it's what I just told you. It's a damper and a sustain. The middle pedal is a coin toss, and it depends on the model of the piano, and it depends on the manufacturer of the piano. When I was younger, that pedal in the middle was a bass sustain. So it would sustain certain notes, I believe, like the E above low C, all the way down, and everything else would have the dampers down.
Okay.
In this day and age, it's now generally the practice pedal, or what they call a mute, even though it doesn't really completely mute the instrument.
Even more than the damper.
It's even more than a damper. What it does as a mute pedal, and this is most of people going out looking at new and relatively used pianos, that middle pedal is probably going to be a mute pedal. It's going to take some felt and wool and drop it in front of the hammers, so that when the hammers hit the string, there's actually a piece of wool in between. So
got it.
You know how that would be like playing guitar with your shirt over the strings.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it does. It allows you to play maybe at night when babies and kids are sleeping or something.
That's important for parents to know and stuff,
you
but
can
most
practice,
pianos have that.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the middle pedal on upper grade pianos is called the Sustanuto pedal.
Okay.
And what that does is you play a bunch, notes, press the pedal down, only those notes have the dampers lifted off. So you can play a chord, press the pedal, and run a real fast scale.
Interesting. So, you know, as we're talking about features, the way you just described that, in a way I've never really understood, because I've never dived deep enough into it. Now I can see, looking through descriptions or bullet points of pianos and understanding how it would be described with the different pedal functionality for someone who's using it at home with kids or for practice versus a piano that's made for performance, and why it would have differing features then.
That Sustanuto pedal
Yeah.
is an expensive pedal to have on a piano.
So it'd be on an expensive piano.
And there are some teachers that say, it's time, Chris, for you to get your kids a new piano, and they must have one with a Sustanuto pedal. What they're telling you is like, your kids are starting to break onto the edge to where they're going to be serious pianists.
Right, the instrument they've got no longer suits them.
Right. They're going into advanced level. They're going to be reading piano literature that's going to require use of that pedal, of which I never did.
Yeah.
When it got to Sustanuto pedal, I thought, you know what, this is about as smart as I want to get.
Great.
And it's not that but my favorite pedal is the damper pedal.
Yeah.
And it's great and wonderful on an upright piano, but when you move that damper pedal over to a grand piano, that feature is really an advanced feature, because it actually slides all the action of the keys actually move over to the right. And when the hammers come up, they're not hitting the strings in the same spot.
Yeah.
So if there's lines in those hammers, the lines aren't hitting the strings again. The soft spot in between the hammers are hitting. And generally, in the treble strings, where there's 3 of them, you're only getting 2 of them.
Well, okay.
So not only do you get a volume,
Yeah.
and you also get a timbre and a tonal difference.
Yeah, it changes the tonality of the
So you
whole
can
instrument.
really make the piano go from background to singing mode by using that pedal on and off.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, so it's kind of it's like the heart and soul of a piano, and very few pianists
it
that
really-
I know of use it a lot, but it allows the music to breathe.
It seems like outside of the way you play, it probably has the most influence on the musicality of your performance.
Absolutely.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that at all. So, you've talked about of course, there's
These are just all musical
Right,
features.
right.
We need to talk about things. Well, we did talk a little bit about aesthetics.
Well, we talked about aesthetics, and of course that's something, but you have put in context with the sound. You talked about action, and I'm curious, is there something that should be kind of maybe would show up that would help me understand the type of action I might before I set down at a piano? If I'm looking through literature, say, and it says it has this type of action or that type of action, would it help me to understand what I'm going to possibly expect or what I should look for?
Well, in terms of the action, there's a lot of working components in every single key.
Yeah.
On the piano. And even though, like some people said, you don't use the black keys that much when you're starting off, but all the components are there just like are on the other keys that you're using. You cannot read how a guitar, you can read how a guitar feels, you can read how a piano feels, but it's not the same
Until you
thing
sit down at
until
it,
you
yeah.
pick it up. And so if you're a guy that's interested, because I'm getting ready, I'm willing to spend $10,000, $15,000 on my kids' piano education because they've been at it quite serious and I want to get them a great instrument. I fool around a little bit on a piano, perhaps. A lot of dads say this. How can I tell when I go in there? So I'll tell you what, just play a C chord and hold it. Play the lowest C on the piano and see how it feels. And each key that you play going up that piano should be a little lighter than the one in front of it. So if you're comparing the weight to push this one down to one way down here, then you know the action's got some kind of balance to it. These are larger hammers, they're going to be heavier and they get lighter, and the hammers up here are almost just like
barely, because they're barely hitting a string.
Barely hitting a string.
Wow,
and
that's a
because
great
the
tip.
strings are very, very short. So just sit down and see, and you can feel the mechanism. You can feel the hammer on a grand either coming up or the action engaging. And it should, for the most part, be silent. And you can feel it engaging. Some pianos have a part where you can actually feel where the key rolls out. And there's some actions, a lot of the Austrian and European actions are like that.
Okay.
And that gives you a kind of like a gradation as you sit there and practice your trills for how you can control the volume in each individual note.
Okay.
And on some other piano actions, you can do that, but it doesn't have that rounded feel to it.
Yeah.
That's usually called key dip. That's one of the features you want to look at and make sure is consistent as the action. And there are certain companies that do nothing but manufacture piano actions. Okay, so Schwander is one of them. Renner actually makes hammers and actions, and these actions are expensive, and they show up in a lot of the premier piano models.
Okay.
So like your top-of-the-line Steinways have a Renner action and Renner hammers in them, and the top-of-the-line Baldwins used to, but they don't make them like that anymore.
Right.
Other companies like Yamaha and Kawai, they have their own version of a Renner-based action, and I think years ago Yamaha copied someone's action, this is like back in the 70s, and got it to work a lot better to where everyone preferred it, and they left like 12 or 13 parts out.
Wow.
It had lesser parts and it actually worked better.
It just seemed more efficient.
As part of the piano's Yamaha action for Yamaha, part of their history was actually neat as they reduced the parts but got the parts that were left behind to work a lot better. And in the 70s, I don't know a single musician that would not want to sit down at a Yamaha piano.
Yeah.
And it was mostly because of the consistency of the action. So that's one thing you want to look for. On an older used piano, you may have a few keys around in the center where beginners are at that might be just a little bit looser than the others.
Yeah.
And then if it's a much, much older piano, the one thing that makes a really big difference are just the keypads underneath the keys. There's those rods that stick up and they have these round felt pads, and they actually prevent the hammers from the keys from making
Bottoming
a
out.
noise and from hitting wood on wood.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you've seen them around here in the basement do a clunk, clunk, clunk. The clunking is actually louder than the piano, especially on those spinners. They're like, this would be a great drum. If you could get different tones out of the
Piano's
clunks.
percussion instrument, but not in that way. Yeah.
Right. But if I could tune these clunks, man, it would sound pretty cool.
Right.
So that's another feature. And then if there's, and I mentioned this a couple times, if you're a young family where you have someone that's advancing to like a more serious piano, and then you have someone who's just like starting, that means in age they're going to go anywhere from 2 on up. I always recommend if you can get the soft close lid, if the model comes with the soft close lid.
Now that's interesting. That's, I think, other than aesthetics, the first kind of non-musical feature that you've pointed out. So the soft close lid is really important.
I say it's important for this reason. Someone that's spending a large amount of money for their children's piano education, they may have the younger ones that haven't started piano yet. You will never get them to want to play that instrument if that lid slams on their fingers from one of their older brothers.
And you also never get them to not touch it while someone else is playing if that lid's it's open.
They won't touch it anymore after their fingers get caught in it. So a soft closed lid is very important.
Okay.
And some of the other ones, lids, you have to remember they were L-shaped, and when they slammed down, it's
happened to me.
See?
Yeah, it happened to me. But I kept playing.
Good for you. But no, I do recommend that soft close lid if there's younger children in the house, because you're not going to be watching them all the time, and someone's going to run their Matchbox or Hot Wheels car down those keys, and that's when that lid's going to get slammed in someone's fingers.
Yeah.
That's what happened in our house. So,
it's a great safety feature.
It is. It's a great safety feature. And the other things, naturally, the next question that people ask about say, what about the soundboard? There always seems a lot of soundboard.
I have a question about that,
soundboard. And the soundboards are kind of like the craftsman-y part other than the mechanics. You have to shimmy this thing into place. Each one almost has to be hand sanded into each framed piano that's made, whether it's a upright or a grand. It's not something that you just slap on.
They're that tight fitting and
they're
have to
that
be
tight fitting because what is very hard to see on a piano is that board that goes in there is not flat. That thing is bowed. That whole board is designed not to fit in the square perfectly.
Yeah.
So
it's got a radius to it.
It has a radius to it. So toward the ends, they sand them down so they can kind of fit them in there. And that board has to be placed in there, and it has to be able to vibrate, move the air, and make the waves. And now soundboards, they get flooded, they get dried out, or they could get in a high humidity. Like I got a nice house on the Gulf of Mexico, and I leave the windows open, and my piano sits right near the porch.
Yeah,
And it sounds
just swells
beautiful.
up.
It just swells up.
Yeah.
After a while, it's going to be hard to push the key down. Different things will start happening with the action. These kind of things do affect the soundboard. If they expand and contract a lot, like say if you were living at a beach house in Maine, 4 perfect seasons. After 5-6 years, that soundboard may start to look like it's getting a few cracks in it, unless you do some kind of preventive maintenance on it.
Some way to control the temperature, humidity.
And so a lot of times when you read, I'm looking to buy a used piano, a lot of horror stories are written about the soundboard, and that's to scare you into buying a new piano. And can you really check a soundboard? Yeah, you can check and listen to it. Is it buzzing? Is it making any kind of noise? Is it swelled up? Is it missing a chunk? And sometimes you get rodents chew off corners of them. They go right through them. Sometimes they get repaired, especially on the more expensive grand pianos. When you look at the soundboard and you can see these little slivers of shimmied wood in there, and then people start thinking, oh, why did this soundboard crack? Or I don't want that piano. It's got a cracked soundboard. I know a guy that was gifted a beautiful Steinway piano, and he played on it for years and knew it had a cracked soundboard. It's still one of the best sounding pianos ever. Just had a crack in it and a little hole in it.
Yeah.
Didn't buzz, didn't make any noise, didn't affect the sound.
So really understanding the condition of it, of what it is, what it could go through on a used piano particularly, and putting all that in context with if it's been repaired, what the condition finally is, and what it sounds like.
Right. And if you're buying from a reputable dealer, I mean, they're going to back whatever they sell for the most part of that.
AlamoMusic.com.
Yeah. So if you're buying from a reputable dealer, you don't have to worry about these little kind of things. If you're buying from a guy that knows pianos and been I mean, I believe there's great purchases out there all over the place. But when it comes to soundboards and people talking about, be aware of when you're buying a used piano, that is one of the things that they do put a lot of fear stories into. And there are some, dramatic stories, okay? And then that, or the other one is, one of the features is the pin block. It's got a cracked pin block. Now, a cracked pin block cannot be repaired. A cracked pin block will probably affect the tuning pins, which means the instrument won't stay in tune. Okay, so a pin block.
So it will forever sound like a saloon piano.
It'll always sound like, not even, it'll sound like a Carnival Midway piano, a busted calliope. Okay?
Got it.
It'll be way out of tune. And that we've had a few of those in here, and there are a few pin blocks that I have seen cracked on upright pianos. However, they were flooded. Okay, flooded pianos, a lot of times they still work, but you're not going to be able to sell it at a profit for anyone. It could just maybe be a functioning instrument until it starts to fall apart.
Right.
So the pin block, the soundboard, those are the main features, as well as after, it's a music instrument, the touch and the tone and the action. A lot of things have to go right for a piano to be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. And granted, if the first 2 or 3 keys aren't working and the last 2 or 3 keys aren't working, your children can still play on the piano. It's not like it doesn't serve its purpose, or it's just a beginner's piano. We have a lot of people come in, I'm looking for a beginner's piano. I don't know anyone that's ever manufactured and made a beginner's piano.
Yeah.
Okay, the closest thing would maybe a Spin It, but it was never marketed as a beginner's piano. But a lot of people go out to buy a beginner's instrument. And there are you think about it, woodwinds, beginner instruments, they have beginner trumpets. They don't have beginner pianos. Yeah. They're marketed and sold as a great piano for a beginner. And it's because the piano's a piano. People have different ideas about spinnets, okay? And one of the other features is that the soundboard is an expensive part, and the most selective wood that goes into that instrument is going to be on the soundboard. However, a lot of pianos are made with different plywood soundboards. Okay,
right.
So they're
it's hard to find a piece of spruce that's that big.
Right, but a soundboard is actually planked together like a floor.
Yeah.
On the plywood soundboards, they actually have a spruce veneer and a spruce veneer with filler material, and it's all glued and pressed together. And Wurlitzer was a premier manufacturer of those plywood boards. And I'll tell you what, some of those pianos had a very different, unique sound to them, especially the spinnets. Because a laminated soundboard, a plywood soundboard like that, is actually going to play a little bit louder. And so Nat King Cole used to use a spinnet every now and then. So he would look good from here on up on the camera.
And get the volume.
And he could get the volume that he needed. And remember, he played those lovely 1 and 2 note solos that were, just the feature part of the song. Yeah. And so, Spin-It isn't just a beginner's piano. If Nat King Cole played one on TV, that's a professional grade instrument. And you see a lot of these, especially bands in the last 10 or 15 years, I think they're hauling these old pianos out of their family homes and stuff and using them, stripping off all the lumber and going out there with just a frame. Yeah. The piano guys do that a lot. They just go out there without any of the lumber and just play the insides of a piano. And the insides of a piano is one of the things that it hit right at the time when the industrial age was at its boom, and people loved things that were mechanical, and they loved all of the growth of industrialization. And so when you have these St. Louis fairs and Chicago fairs that were as famous as they have been, those stickers are still on a lot of those soundboards on pianos. Winter 1876 Chicago, St. Louis fairs. This was big things out west, particularly out west, because it was the culture of what was the Northeast, Boston and New York, starting to move. Obviously in Chicago, that was why it was Second City. This is like the new New York. And then St. Louis, as these state fairs and these world expositions came together, all of these manufacturers, just like today, go there to show off their wares. Yeah. And some of these guys making pianos back then are still in the business. And so that's kind of one of those features that you have on there, is that there's a lot of components that need to work right on a piano. But the main important thing is that if there's a way someone can be learning and using that instrument, particularly if they're young, is to let them use it and have the instrument to play.
Well, great. Yeah, that's enlightening. I just, my head hurts a little bit, but
sorry.
That's
kind of detailed.
It's a lot of information put in there, but it really, I think probably my biggest takeaway, Ted, was the feel of how the action should be. I've been playing on piano since I was little, but understanding maybe it was intuitive, but understanding that it should get lighter as it goes up just makes perfect sense, you know, and the way you described it
I've
helped.
got a little story that goes with that because I've worked over the years, and you can ask others that have been around here. Every professional pianist that comes in here, we go into the grand room. I'm looking for a grand, and you can tell they're motivated. The dude's been hanging around your store on and off over 5-6 years, and it's one day he comes in, he's got a little entourage. And this is amazing because when they're not coming in just to poke around and practice and play. They're coming in to look and think about buying a piano today at this store.
Right.
It's funny because they'll sit down and they'll get right up. They'll just go to another piano. Sometimes they don't even spend 10 or 15 seconds on certain instruments.
I've watched them. They know exactly what they're looking for.
And they get up and go.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they find something they like, and then you get around to talking about price, and they get to where they're not smiling as much anymore. And then you say, well, you know that piano you got up from, why don't you go back there and give that one a try? Because it's half the price of this, and every single feature you have in here, you have over there. Mm-hmm. It's just 8 or 9 inches shorter.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. And the guy tuned it. And I know you didn't give it a shot, and I'm not trying to put you back there, but just go check it out. And I leave the room. You come back an hour later. I'll take this one.
Works.
Features.
Hey, you know, not just features, experience. Working with someone who actually knows what they're talking about, good thing to do. So as you are shopping for pianos, new or used, and you're reading all these features and you're trying to put it in context, make sure that you reach out to a reputable, knowledgeable piano salesperson at alamomusic.com where you can chat with us live and, you know, actually understand the differences and help get guided through to find the right thing for yourself as a player or for your family. Ted, that was very, very helpful.
Oh, great. I'm glad I could help.
If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos, keep coming back for more, and thanks for watching today. We appreciate it.